Hi, Dr. Reddy. Can you hear
Uh,
me?
yes, Prenisha, how are you? Good to connect up again.
Yes. How are you doing? How's your week been?
Good week. Good week has been a very good week. We got sunlight and we got some warmth in there, around us, in our hearts as well. I'm sure that all of us need to look at the lovely light of the rising sun and the sunset.
Absolutely. We've really been enjoying this weather. The pets have been out and about and getting lots of solar codes and frequencies from the sun. So it's been quite healing, enjoying the sun. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Reddy. We have a really big topic today.
Yes, yes. I think it's a fascinating topic to especially in the time of spring is coming up, and to know that how we function within ourselves and outside, and how all the beings of existence, the birds are around, and the
Mm,
flowers are begin to surface, which I think is great, And I think this topic is about getting everybody to understand him or herself.
yes, absolutely. And I think the more we understand ourselves, the more we understand how the world works, the universe works, the more we understand other people, and the more we understand what God or source power or source energy is all about. So very important topic today.
Yes, yes, certainly. I think it's one of the most underestimated topics that discussed in media and discussions and
Mm,
interaction. And I think that it's fascinating that you came up with this idea. I think it's something that I think it's real, it's tangible, and we can
mhm.
use it in our daily life by understanding ourselves better.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, everybody, if you've just joined us, welcome. Today we are talking about super brain yoga. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. We're going to get into it. Please keep pen and paper handy. If you'd like to ask questions to Dr. Reddy, please note them down, put them in the comments, then we can ask them, as well as on Facebook as well. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below so we can ask Dr. Reddy and we can pick his brain and annoy him while we have him for this hour or so. um,
Certainly. I will try my best to be engaging as possible.
Thank you so much. So we are talking about the brain. So Dr. Eddie, can you please give us a brief understanding of what exactly the brain does, the functioning of it, how it maneuvers, as well as chemicals that be released as well, if you can add that into, please?
Yes. The brain is a fascinating part of the body. Though it may be a very complex part of the body, and it
Mm,
weighs just about I think 1.3, just over 1.3 kilograms. That's what the
wow.
brain weighs.
Mm-hmm.
But the brain is a seat of intelligence. It's the five senses: the smell, taste, touch, and it's such a key part of no, of all the five senses, the sight and everything. And it's the most important thing. It's interpreter of the five senses. I mean, the way you hear, the way you see, the way you touch, the way you smell. And
Mm,
I think it's important to realize that it comes from a brain stimulus.
yeah.
And without the brain we can't move. So the brain is
Mm,
initiated of every, whether we walk, whether we dance, whether we sing, everything is related to some body movement initiated by the brain itself. So
mm,
technically the brain is a controller of our behavior patterns. And
mm,
it's a very fragile shell. It's like a bony shell around, and obviously that protects the fluid in there. But the critical factor is that it exerts some chemicals that, as you spoke about, some dopamine, some endorphins and serotonin, and these chemicals can make you feel a sense of well-being. But the
yes.
reverse aspect as well, that if you don't allow your brain to function optimally, and whereby you, in a positive sense, positive chemicals are released. In a negative sense, you suppress the release of the chemicals,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
it's important that your thought processes must always be in a positive sense, and that affects your what you call your decision making.
Mm,
Prenisha, if your thought processes are correct in the way that you relate from your brain function, your
mm,
emotions are in a balanced state, your memory patterns are more enhanced or better,
mm,
and in
yes.
fact that if you are balanced in the brain function, so what we call your motor functions are your You know, you move your hands, you move your fingers, you move your toes, and you move your legs. These are all what we call motor functions. You know, and the
Mhm.
brain balances it from the right and left part. We'll talk about the two parts of the brain just now. But I think this is the sum total of it. And you know, what gives you a pain or a pleasure? It's the perception of sensations in your brain. So you send the signal to the brain. For example, if you
Yeah.
get a thorn under your foot, right, the brain
Mhm.
saying that you got pain. But at the
Yeah.
same signal that if you walk on bare feet on the ground and you feel grounded and you feel a sense of well-being at the same
Mm.
time, right? And
Mm.
so there's another part of the brain function, what you call is the autonomic behavior of the brain that affects your heart, affects the way your lung functions, your
Mm.
temperature control. What you call is your thermostat in your brain. It gives you temperature
Mhm.
variations, you know, to feel hot or to feel cold. And if you have a fever, that the temperature control goes up, your thermostat. And also that your
Mm.
brain functions, you know, automatically affects your heart rate and your sleep patterns. You know, so this
Yeah.
is why the regulation of the function of the brain is critical. And the last and most
Mm.
important thing, the brain function, your speech, your language, your functions. But you know, the brain is such a fascinating thing. There's no like endpoint in terms of announcement of your brain function. You know, and
Mm.
you know, we all know that from the point of view of science that your brain is made of about 75% water, is made of about about 60% of brain, or your brain is fat basically over there, right? But you know,
Mhm.
people often ask me this question: when isn't the brain fully formed? The brain is actually is stimulated continuously. The science says that at the age of about 25 years old, right?
Mhm.
And this is where the brain functions, right? So until the age of
Sorry,
25,
sorry,
that you're
Dr.
going through
B.
the process of
Sorry,
knowing that.
can you please repeat it? I think you were getting a call, so it kind of put us on hold.
Oh, okay.
You're
Sorry, sorry,
talking.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Uh,
We can hear you now.
is it loud enough, or shall I put loud?
Yeah, 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 it's loud enough. We kind of lost you when you were talking about the brain function and how old it develops,
Oh,
like how
oh,
old.
is okay, okay. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
No
Sorry.
worries, no
Yeah,
worries. Mm.
I said the brain basically consists of about to 25 years old, right? The brain continually forms, you know,
Okay, okay.
right? And so there's a continuous process of brain function on
Mm-hmm.
that. But understand that the brain, you got 60% of fat on the brain, and the brain development continues until the age of 25. And the brain is a large percentage made of water. It science says that 65%, 75% of the brain is water.
Mm-hmm. Wow, okay.
Can you hear me, Prenisha?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just 1 second. Let me just put this together. Yeah. So I think that you understand that the way your brain, what's it made of, and if you say the brain is made of 75% water, 25% fat, so naturally is that what feeds the brain, right? You know, I mean, this is just, that question. You know,
Mm.
so
Yes.
obviously it's the intake in terms of your water percentage, that which is critical in the brain, in terms of
Mhm.
the kind of food that you eat as well.
Mhm.
I think that's also important in the brain,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
So I think the nutrient functions in terms of nutrients, which I think is important to understand. The brain can function optimally provided that you allow it to function.
Mm. Okay. So, you said a lot of how the brain functions. Um, but how do we exercise the brain? How do we keep it healthy? And why is it important to keep it healthy? A lot of us, look at our physical body, as in, do we have biceps? Is our butt big? We look at all these different things, but a lot of us forget that we also have to exercise our brain. So why is it important to exercise the brain? And how can we keep it healthy?
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating question, right? See, the first thing we understand, there are two parts of the brain. One is the
Okay.
right brain and left brain.
Yes.
Okay, so the left brain is an organized part of the brain that involves in terms of organizing yourself. Whether
Mhm.
in let's say they are more linear, like for example, that it's one dimensional. But the right brain, left brain is more gives you the emotional part of the brain, and the right, and the left brain gives you a more organized part of the brain. Let's say from a mathematician perspective, but the
Mm-hmm.
right brain gives the emotional aspect, gives the stimulus from the music aspect and the
Yeah.
harmony. So you need two parts of the brain to be in tandem with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order for that to happen, you need a stimulus for the brain to keep it healthy. The first thing is that what you need with the brain function is that to the five senses: sense of hearing, sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of
Mm-hmm.
taste, and sense of touch. Those
Yes.
must be stimulated accordingly. That means what you
Mm.
hear, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, and what you feel. So
Okay.
that must be the correct stimulus to exercise your brain correctly, right? So through this process of the brain, from
Mm-hmm.
a practical aspect of that, for example, reading correctly,
Mm-hmm.
researching material correctly,
Yes.
exposing yourself to good vibrations, good thought processes, good reading material, watching a good YouTube video or whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
to stimulate your brain, right? And for example, there's simple things like I tell people this who are on the older, which will come to the topic later on Alzheimer's and autism, and how you use simple things like a crossword puzzle and a Sudoku.
Mm.
But there's another interesting aspect of the brain function is smell. So if you're surrounded with flora and fauna of plants and with the correct smells, how it stimulates the brain in terms of your good sense of smell.
Mm.
And it's the simultaneously that if you hear good music and good thoughts and all these kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it stimulates you correctly. There are
Mm.
certain pieces of Beethoven and Mozart music that
Yes.
helps the development disorders, in which will come to that the next one, point down the line. In
Yeah.
terms of understanding that how music stimulates the brain,
Mm.
and how simple things like, for example, we come to our yogic exercises, how it stimulates the brain, right?
Mm.
And I think that the brain can be kept healthy provided that you have a healthy mind. The
Mm.
healthy mind is about your positive emotions and orientation to life. And look at the glass always half full and not half empty.
Mm. Absolutely. So you did touch on a few things. We did do, Dr. Reddy and I did do an event not too far back. We talked about developmental disorders. We talked about ADHD, we talked about autism, alcohol, fetal, even dyslexia, things like this. Could you please recap on that if you can, Dr. Reddy, and how the brain is affected when you have these developmental disorders or disabilities?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing that which is very common in terms of in this day of age what we've got, and we challenge in this area is fear and anxiety,
Yes.
right? I think that this is I'm highlighting that aspect here in the South African context because in the medical field now that's considered to be a developmental disorder where people
Oh.
absorb fear and anxiety and how you create the impact on your brain function, right?
Wow. Okay.
And that
Yeah.
in turn that creates a negative spin about your orientation in life. That's why he
Yeah.
said, you must be less stressful, less anxious, and most important thing, use common sense principles in a fear syndrome. You know what I mean.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
do not absorb this kind of anxiety and fear. You must let go to the universe and say that, you know what, I'm not going to be fearful. I'm not going to be anxious, and I want to be part of a life whereby I'm absolutely calm. So I think that's one of
Mm.
the things that we didn't discuss the last time about
Yeah.
anxiety and fear, which I think is important to realize that in medical field today, in South African context, it's been classified as a disorder. The
Mm.
second disorder, which we spoke about, which I like to highlight again, is
Mhm.
ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity syndrome. And
Mhm.
this comes largely in children, but also affects adults as well, right?
Yeah.
Whereby the intake of high carbohydrate diet, intake of high sugar diet, right?
Mm.
And I think that is a big factor in affecting children who are ADHD. The other aspect of
Mm.
affecting ADHD, children who are mouth breathers, if they're more mouth breathing, they're nasal breathing, because mouth is
Mm.
meant to eat and speak, and nose is meant to smell. So if you breathe to the nose, that the nitric oxide in the filters to the air passage, gets you pure oxygen, and that you're more alert.
Hmm.
right? So
Okay.
that's the important
Yeah.
part of understanding that ADHD. So when you look for a child who's got mouth breathing, is a potential ADHD developmental disorder that's going to be affected the child. So,
Hmm.
but in this ADHD situation that whereby that in many of the schools we got today, they're putting children on Concerta and Ritalin. These are drugs really that affect the children. But we found there's a
Hmm.
methodology how to treat this thing holistically and naturally. One is by
Hmm.
converting mouth to nasal breathing. That's the first thing.
Hmm.
Secondly, is that
Hmm.
by dietary control, decrease the carbohydrate, decrease junk food, decrease the sugars, and that's a big factor in this whole thing. The third part of it, how we introduce music as a corrective therapy, pieces of Mozart, pieces of classical music, that the correct tonal notes, and for Beethoven, and positively even playing pieces on the piano, which is affect you positively.
Hmm.
Then there's a thing called
Yes.
plant therapy. There's three significant plants, which we know as the ficus benjamin chrysanthemum and the white lily, that restore the balance of ADD and ADHD. Right? And
Wow.
there's a thing,
Okay.
and there's other aspects called aromatherapy oils, like there is black pepper, orange, and lavender that stimulates the right brain, left brain to decrease this attention
Hmm.
deficit syndrome. And I think
Okay.
this is fascinating. And I think from a natural medical perspective, this thing called Brahmi powder, which we know in the marketplace as keen mind, right? And the
Hmm.
people are
Yeah.
going now to metric and an examination period, and keen mind and biostrat are the two significant about natural medication as possible for them is to absorb that and take that.
Hmm.
Right? Then we come to the other disorder which we spoke about the last time, is on autism. Autism is a very challenging period. It's a whole spectrum of disorders. And but the autism, it's about understanding the behavioral patterns. What's different communication aspects, or the habits, and in terms of how they relate to themselves, and about being
Hmm.
reserved and not communicating correctly. But don't look at them as a handicap aspect which we looking at from a development disorder. I think look at it as that how can we manage it and treat it. We know that autism affects a brain function, and we know that from the point of view of science is that some of the foods affect these children, and we know that what really happens is that when they have a high carbohydrate diet, what we call inflammatory foods, this affects the brain function. So I think by
Hmm.
selective behavioral patterns generated by correct diet and correct understanding of the child from a psychological perspective, I think this can be effective and positively to rehabilitate these children. Right?
Yes. Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
other aspect we spoke about last time, Prenisha, was cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy,
Yeah.
is not genetic, right? But it is a problem that affects the development of a baby's brain,
Mm.
usually while it's growing in the womb. But it also can be damaged in other aspects of life, early in the early stages. The damage is a part of the
Mhm.
brain called the white matter, and as a result of that, possibly a reduced blood supply or oxygen supply, and in this area, so we, what we call is a periventricular leukomalacia, the scientific aspect of that. But in net sense, in a simple way, there's reduced blood supply and oxygen to the brain that affects the cerebral palsy children. But if managed
Mm.
correctly, these children can have a
Mhm.
long life. They often compensate by being very smart, very compassionate, and a lot of good emotions. So I think this is
Mm.
possible. And there's one simple drug that affects the three aspects I spoke about so far: cerebral palsy, ADHD, and autism. Is a natural drug called ginkgo biloba. Ginkgo biloba is a natural herb, right? And it can bought over the counter, and it's cost-effective tablet, but affects them very, very positively.
Oh, okay.
That aspect there, right? So
Mm.
right. So I think that aspect in terms of understanding the development disorders and how it affects the brain function. To know the brain is obviously slowed down in function. But I just want to highlight something very important in brain function. It is a process of the intellect. The intellect is not related to brain function, but intellect is a
Mm.
very amorphous kind of aspect of stimulus, what gives the power to discriminate what's wrong and what's right, whether to turn left
Mhm.
or whether to turn right. Right.
Yes.
So I think it's a power of discrimination is stimulated through your intellect, and which is a subtle part of brain function.
Hmm. Dr. Reddy, we didn't tap into this disorder, but what happens to the brain when somebody has dyslexia? Because obviously they're not, seeing, and then it gets mixed up here, and then, but they can speak properly. I wanted to talk about dyslexia as well as stroke. What happens in the brain when somebody has a stroke? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, no, no,
Just
no.
give
It's
me
fine. It's fine. I think that's fine. See, the problem is that when you have a stroke, right? Depending,
yeah,
sometimes different parts of the brain is affected. Some is affected in terms of your movement. Some affected in your speech. Some is affected your hearing. I think there's different effects on different parts of the body, right?
yes,
And
yeah,
it's amazing that when this happens, and in dyslexic people, even at a young age, or teenagers, they have
yeah.
difficulty in reading. They have what you call slow in understanding, in problem spelling, and for example, that they will instead of putting the three, they'll put the two first, and they put the three later. Instead of putting the A
Mm,
first, they'll put the B first, over there. So, so dyslexic individuals, are often, the uh, it's about avoiding aspects. For example, they avoiding activities that involve reading. They avoid activities in terms of speech.
mm,
So they're
yeah,
not coherent in way they find. So that also must understand that we have to elicit the signs and symptoms. We shouldn't just be classified that in terms of just in terms of reactive. So I think the signs to observe in dyslexic patients, it has early stages of them, and in fact which differentiated to I say to a stroke function. It's about a
mm,
learning difficulty that primarily affect the skills in accurate and fluently reading and spelling. And the characteristic
mm,
effective, which we can observe as mothers and as parents, wherever that there is difficulties in pronunciation and about awareness of the pronunciation. There is
mm,
compromise about verbal memory, and it's about the verbal processing speed. They often may be slower, or maybe extremely insufficient. What to call me phonetics in terms of understanding of this. So that in turn affects the reading, affects the writing, and the spelling. The three things are affected in dyslexic patients.
mm.
No? So,
Yes.
so in terms of the stroke, so stroke can
Yeah.
have the similar effect, but stroke,
Mm,
sometimes the symptoms on stroke is very overt. The way you drag your feet, the way that your arms, and the way your movements, and the sudden confusion, you have trouble speaking, and then also that, for example, you have sudden dizziness, loss of balance and coordination, you know, difficult in walking, or even movement from left to right. So these are some of the common symptoms that we see in stroke, but obviously comes from your brain function, and some of these come from stress-driven effects in life, and can cause an imbalance, and have an impulse that causes a stroke. This is why important to be stress-free in life. I think it's realized that and that if you have these signs of overstressed or over control, these are signs that obviously is not healthy.
mm.
you know
Yes,
but
true.
but but the thing is that not everybody experiences the same symptoms in stroke patients,
Yeah.
right? It may be different,
Right.
affecting the face, the arm, the leg, numbness, weakness,
Mm,
different parts, and so it's very specific to each individual.
mm-hmm. Yes. Um, just for everybody on here, we are going to get into what super brain yoga is and how we can combat all of these things. But I just wanted to expand on what can happen if we don't look after our brain. And when we age and as we get older, the brain functionality starts to decrease. And we then develop disorders like, Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that. Dr. Reddy, can you please expand on what happens on the brain when we age and the functionality of the brain as we age? And if we don't exercise it, what happens?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question, right? Right. Just to highlight to everyone on the program, yeah, the brain function. Uh, in a very unique way, optimizes function at the age of 70 years old.
Mm,
Right? The
okay.
brain function optimizes at 70 years old when you're the most acute. This is a fascinating science being found.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
70.
right. Right. But in order to reach that stage of optimal function at 70, whereby now in the Western philosophy, and that you must retire at the age of 60 or 65, whatever it may be. But they
Yeah.
found that now that people are beginning to re-employ people at the older age, because they find that people are living longer, and people who are mentally active and have good brain health are able to function optimally when the age of 70. Hence, that a lot
Wow.
of the teachers and lecturers are being re-employed and doing good work at private universities and colleges that were retired in public sector worldwide.
That's so funny because Daddy is going to be 70 next year, and we are telling
Really?
him like, are you ready for retirement? And he doesn't want to retire. We're forcing him, but he's going to be 70, but you'll never say that he's 70, and that, his brain is still going, even though he had a stroke back in 2010. Um, he's been keeping healthy and things like that, but you'd never say that he's going to be 70, and we force him to retire, but I don't think he will. And now that you're
No,
saying the
no, no. You
optimal,
mustn't retire. So as soon as you retire, you become brain dead.
oh my goodness, okay. He'll
because
be
because
happy
the
to
reason for that, your mind, your body, and your intellect must be in balance together, right? So
mm,
the body is meant to work and meant to move. The body is not meant to be on the golf course.
yes. Okay, I'll tell him. I'm sure he'll be super excited to hear this.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and but what you spoke about how to keep the brain healthy, which I think it's a very important understanding and topic, and how to prevent Alzheimer's and aging. The only way you could do that, Pranisha, there's a few aspects of cardinal. One is the dietary aspect, the food that you
Mm,
eat. This is why you need
yes.
to eat live foods, foods like a sprouts and nuts, and what the thing called superfoods. Chia seeds and almonds and chickpeas and the range of foods like this, which we know and gives you the correct brain function and the brain stimulus that you have. Flax seeds and so the sprouts are eaten in three ways: short, medium, and long. And each part of the sprouts gives you different trace element to stimulate you, right?
Oh,
So I think that from a dietary perspective is critical. Then the second thing is that from a learning perspective, and they say that you must be in ever to be youthful, you must be ever spirit of learning.
mm,
So you must always say to yourself, what do I learn and what have I learned, right? And
mm,
so I think that is very critical in terms of the brain function, the brain stimulus. The
mm,
third aspect of brain function is that you must orientate yourself to all positive aspect of living of life. Look at
mm,
the solutionist thinking. Listen to good music, good sound, good smell. Feel, smell. All the. Well, this way you need to exercise. What is the issue with exercising? Walking, hiking, and
mm,
the reason for that is it stimulates your under acupressure point under your feet, which is related to the seven body systems in your body.
mm.
So that's the reason why movement is critical in this way. And then
Yes.
all the things that stimulates the brain, for example, whether you're doing crossword, whether you're doing playing chess, whether you play music, and whether you do crosswords Sudoku, whatever it may be,
Mm,
you need to stimulate your brain to keep your brain function healthy. You mustn't be in this way whereby you're non-communicative, you're not thinking correct, you're not discriminating. This is why reading is critical,
mm.
right?
Absolutely.
And the last thing is that we are social beings in the world, right? How
Yeah.
to communicate with people as socially and interact with them, and how can we do what you call selfless beings, like being there for people, sharing experiences, and encouraging people. Like your dad is 70. How can you be an
Mm,
example to other people? Dad had a stroke. How he reshaped and
mm,
reformed his life.
mm.
We'd love to bring him on the show to talk to
He'll love that. He always says he wants to join, and I say no. But you're coming
you.
in, that's for sure.
Right? I think that once you understand, if you don't stimulate the
Mm,
brain becomes retarded, the brain cell shrinks itself. You almost become brain dead, right? And you
yeah.
age faster, And when you age fast, your brain function affects your liver function in terms of breaking down the enzyme. It affects your cardiac function. It affects your lung function. That's why the body is meant to move all there, because you are
Mm.
a bundle of electrons in your body. There's movement in your body,
Yes.
which I think is amazing, that if you look at this brain function. But I love music myself and sound therapy, and I love to play
Mm.
music. And I said, this
Mm.
is fascinating aspect to keep your brain healthy. Whether it's through your morning prayers, or whatever that you do. And I think you to create the correct vibration. It's all about vibration, Pranisha. If you have good
Yeah.
vibration, good stimulus, and you feel good, the feeling good releases serotonins and endorphins and dopamine. Those are the feel good enzymes.
Mm. So, Dr. Reddy, what are the signs and symptoms um, of a person? Like, what will they show when there is a decrease in brain function? How do we know that our brain isn't working at its optimal level? What will happen?
Yeah, I think that this is a very important aspect for families, is to and I think to understand this process, especially in older people, and in terms of
Mhm.
understanding that um, what are the signs and symptoms of this, so you could help the people in terms of not going into this hole of non-functioning. I'm saying to you, right? So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
know for a fact, as a brain, as you get older, so you tend to slow down a little bit. But the fact is that how can you stimulate yourself? The fact is that the signs to look at for is forgetfulness, right?
Hmm.
Is a lack of interest in life, right? And I think it's important to understand that, right? And in terms of cognitive function, you mean when you say you're forgetting, you're lapsing your memory, and you're feeling sometimes lost in the place, and you go into your own world in terms
Mm.
of going into yourself, in terms of your reactive behavior, and you almost become insular. I think those are the signs of showing people in decrease of what we call cognitive function,
Mm.
which is I think is important. You engage less, and you in conversations, and when you forget conversation, you forget appointments. I think you forget where you put your things. These are early signs, but you can overcome that by
Yeah.
stimulating the brain, which we spoke about. you know
Yes. Yes.
and I think that one to understand at what age people may ask you, that your brain function decreases. In the early years,
Mhm.
people used to say that, when you are 65 years old, and this what happens. But the science is showing that now, depending on how you handle yourself to stimulate your brain function, you can be as healthy in the brain between your 80s and 90s. The people that I know, in the medical field, they have the
Mm.
relatively little decline in performance, and provided they stimulate themselves, and
Mm.
because if you don't stimulate yourself, what you call is brain atrophy. That means your brain size actually shrinks, and it looks fine externally, but internally, and
Mm.
so the size of the brain decreases. So I think if you got the power to allow that, or you the power to stimulate that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
So true. So now we finally come to the actual topic of today. What is super brain yoga? And how can super brain yoga help with all of this developmental disorders, stroke, dyslexia, Alzheimer's, dementia? What is super brain yoga?
Yeah. Prenisha, I just want to touch on something very important for the brain, right? I said to
Yeah.
you earlier on, brain is 75% water. It's important to
Yes.
understand that to optimal function of the brain, one needs to drink water, not get dehydrated,
Hmm.
right? And the second thing is that water affects your memory function, and because of of lack of dehydration, it also
Hmm.
affects your attention span, which I think it's very important, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's critical in terms of to understand that, and why it's important in terms of your hydration, in terms of your food that you eat. And it says that lots of people and do not eat sufficient or don't drink sufficient water. I think these are the signs to show people why you need to drink sufficient water.
Mm,
you know.
absolutely. Yeah.
So that just on a dietary aspects, right?
Yeah.
I think one needs to understand that, you know.
Mm, true.
Yeah. Prenisha, coming to the aspect of what we call is about, the super brain yoga. It's a very simple, easy process in terms of exercise. Why? So basically, is that, obviously I would have loved to be in live to show you how it works, and in terms of the super brain, what you call exercises to stimulate the brain, and also to make sure that there is a sense of well-being. It's an
Mm,
ancient yogic exercises, brain yoga, but it's related to something very basic. And if related to when you were in school, your right hand touches your left lobe of your ear, and the index finger and your thumb, right?
like
And
that.
no, your right goes left.
Like
No,
this.
no, right, correct.
Okay.
And then you squat down,
Okay. Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Right, and people think this is as some sort of punishment, but that is a
Punishment. Yes. The
greatest and
old people.
stimulus, right?
Yes. The
Where
old
that
people
type of
do that.
yoga sends an
Yeah.
electrical stimulus to the brain, right?
Okay.
And that
Okay.
boosts cognitive and clarity in your understanding, and it makes you
Mm,
super sharp, and also it makes you very calm.
okay. Okay.
Right. So the
You know
most
what?
important thing, we understand that it creates a neurological stimulus and a neurological pathway. Right.
Okay.
So you must understand the brain is no different to like a muscle, and it gets a stimulus, right? And
Yes.
so this is why it's so important to do this simple exercise. That's the first exercise. So let's discuss, if you practice super brain yoga every day, what does it do? Once, it
Mm,
increases your understanding of your brain function, right? But it increases your creativity in terms of your skills, your faster reaction of them. The second thing, that
mm,
it helps to calm your mind, which I think is
mm.
important. It affects your
Yes.
memory patterns, number three, right?
Mm.
Number four, it decreases your stress.
Yes.
Number
Okay.
five, it decreases so-called a depressive state. Number six, it
Mm,
improves your balance in life from your right and left. And number eight, emotionally, you find your clarity and you're so much in harmony with yourself, right?
mm,
And number nine is your energy levels,
mm.
right? So that's a one exercise, right? But the second exercise is your breathing function, right?
Okay. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
when you do your correct breath control and your breathing function, in terms of what you call known as alternative nostril breathing, right? and uh,
Mm,
and I think that's one of the most important part in super brain yoga, how this affects you very, very positively, right? And how can you train yourself, in terms of function wise, right?
mhm,
And it's not a very arduous task. I think it's a very simple task to do. So again, it's about coordination of your right brain to the left brain, right? So, and how do we know that this, what I told you now, works, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's only by trial, right? I give you example. If a salt doll goes into the water, it cannot come back and tell you the story. So like that, when you do these exercises with super brain yoga exercises, you know yourself practically, that and how smart you are and how effective it is by you indulging in it,
Mm.
right?
Dr.
And you don't have to pay large amount of money to achieve this, right? It's such a simple kind of exercises for the brain,
Can you please explain how breathing then makes your brain healthy? If you can explain what happens like with the blood and all of that.
Yes, fascinating. So the first thing is that when you breathe, the mouth is meant to eat and speak, and the nose is meant to breathe. So when you
Okay.
breathe to the nose, the
Mm.
nitric oxide in your nose only passes in your body that has nitric oxide. So you
Oh,
get
okay.
air filter and you get pure oxygen. When you get
Okay.
pure oxygen in the your right, so you're more refreshed, you're more alert. That means you
Mm.
get less
Oh,
carbon dioxide infusion, and you get more oxygen infusion. right? And so
Okay.
naturally it affects your cell function, right? And when cell function affects your what you call your arterial and your venous flow of blood. And the most important thing, it
Okay.
affects your vibration of your nerve conduction. What you call is your neuron and
Mm,
dendron, your nerve stimulus, your electrical impulse, and oxygen does that. And the third thing about oxygen affects your what they call your blood in terms of your hemoglobin attaching to the oxygen molecules.
mm,
So that's why your to breathe to the nose is so important, right? And the most important
okay.
thing, Prenisha,
Yeah.
alternative nostril breathing practice makes you very calm and tranquil,
Mm, okay.
right?
Okay.
And I
Mm,
can encourage anybody on this call that if they involve in what they call uh, breathing techniques and with some yogic exercises, and you live longer, you feel happier, and the most important thing, you'll be almost super fit, but your acuteness of your memory and your reaction will be almost like in a microsecond,
mm, mm.
right? So thing is that must realize that you know we're working with a complex system of the brain. They say that there's about over 300 million neurons right connect up the brains from the right and left side. You could imagine
Mm,
that 300,000 300 million neurons is
mm.
massive, colossal. So to make
Yes.
most of one's brain, it needs to be exercised, nurtured, like any other muscle in the body, right? And the
Mm,
brain is joined up what you call by synapses that join the different aspect of the neurons in your body, right? It's
mm.
important to take care of it.
Okay.
So if I ask one of the parents here, how can a parent ensure that child development is constantly improving during school? What could a
Mm,
parent of learning disabled child to help them to develop? I think one of the biggest things in my experience when I counsel young parents is to observe your child closely, befriend your child, understand your child, observe your child, but create the climate for the child to develop correctly,
okay.
right in this to make them in the super brain. But something very interesting in the super brain thing, that different yogic poses that basically keeps your spine perpendicular to the force of gravity. If you got rounded shoulders, if your neck is bent, you're affecting your spinal column and you're affecting the reaction of the nerve endings in the spinal column to your brain, right? So it's very
Mm,
important the way you position yourself, where you walk, the way you talk, even when you're driving, right? You must be sitting upright as possible in your seat and correctly. And for example, where your position of your arms, position of your legs, all these are important aspects of benefiting the child development. And most importantly, with super brain yoga, it affects the concentration of the child. It affects what
mm,
you call is the EQ, the emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence, right? And the
mm.
most important thing that it normalizes behavioral patterns which are so-called dysfunctional. And my experience is that Prenisha, this is improves the
Yeah.
memory of the children tremendously, right?
Mm,
And we could
okay.
even do it in a group session. How in a group session it affects older people to stimulate them to get out of the so-called lull in the life, or so-called people call Alzheimer's and these things. Obviously, there's
Mm,
some dietary effects of Alzheimer's, but also the lack of stimulus or the stimulus of the brain.
mm.
you know so I think it's
Absolutely.
often wrongly classified ADHD in children by teachers not understanding the reasons behind the so-called learning disability and how to correct it without any drugs,
Yes.
right? And the biggest thing about super brain yoga in older people, it can minimize the aging process,
Mm,
right? And so basically, with the
mm,
correct live foods, light diet, superfoods, with decreased memory loss, decreased thing called so-called dementia, and provided that there's a will, and one must realize the power is within ourselves. I said this is one of the programs that
yeah.
is that 6,000 square miles of blood passes you uh, every second, you know,
Mm,
and understand that the brain is that part of the brain which is control the vital functions. From a scientific perspective, and this thing called alpha waves, beta waves, and theta waves. These are very scientific things, but I wouldn't go that into detail. But in summary, is that when you produce the good waves or the alpha waves, you're in a state of relaxation, you're in a state of and alertness, which I think is very important to understand that. So we want to always
mm,
have a good stimulus, you know,
mm,
in ourselves.
mm.
So do not create waves which creates dysfunction, stress, depression. This is why it's important to be in a happy state. There's another simple exercise for brain function is on the trampoline.
Yes, you mentioned something about that. The trampoline.
Yes.
How does it work?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, you don't have to buy an expensive trampoline. You can buy a round trampoline. When you jump up and down, right? So basically, your organs of function are stimulated under your feet. The acupressure points are stimulated. It affects your well-being and releases some endorphins in your system. That
Oh,
affects your serotonin levels, your
yes.
dopamine. So one of the simple exercises you could do in winter at home, and a round little trampoline.
Mm. I've also seen people buy like if they don't have a trampoline, they buy a tennis ball and they just like roll their feet over a tennis ball. I think it like gets the pressure points under the feet. Sort of like
Yes, yes, yes,
reflexology.
yes, yes. That's a very simple kind of program and exercise, and it's fascinating. And the feet is an important part. This is where keep your feet warm, look after your feet, look after your hands, right? I mean,
Mm,
there's acupressure points, and it's a power in your feet. Without your feet, you can't walk, right? You can't do
yes,
things. Nice to look
yes,
after your feet. Yeah,
yes.
and it's important to realize that the correct stimulus to the feet stimulates your brain function. As I said earlier on, if you get a thorn under your feet, your brain reacts immediately. Tell you got a thorn.
Yes, yes. Oh, a Lego piece.
Yeah.
Legos are more detrimental.
Yes,
So
yes, yes, yes.
viewers, if you have any questions for Dr. Reddy, please put them in the comment section, as well as on TikTok. Please put them in the comment section if you have any questions about the brain. And it doesn't matter, you can just throw out questions, because I can't be the only one putting Dr. Reddy on the spot here. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. While we wait for the viewers, Dr. Reddy, somebody was telling me that the brain is very elastic in that um let's say you had a stroke and then you forget how to speak, but then a different part of or a different section of your brain will then you can still train that part to speak again. How true is that the brain can be taught new things all the time, when it comes to language and speech and to walk and things like that? Is it true that the brain is that elastic, or it can still function or
Yes,
be
yes,
retaught?
definitely, definitely, definitely. The brain can be retrained at any point in time,
Yes.
provided you get the right climate, the right stimulus. There's a thing called,
Mm,
an electromagnetic effects, right? And now that to send certain waves, whether it's the alpha waves, whether it's the beta wave or the theta waves, there's certain
yes.
stimulus that will stimulate the brain to function again. There is no doubt about
Mm,
it. It can happen.
okay.
That is a one aspect. There is a machine therapy called the beamer therapy, BWMER, right? Right. So the beamer therapy as well. There's some science to show that the beamer therapy has been very effective in helping people to reestablish this kind of pathways of function again. So there's no doubt
Mm,
about it, right? Again, is about I want to emphasize that there must be a will to do it, because in the beamer therapy it affects blood circulation in healthy muscles and healthy tissues. So, in order for that to happen, there's a stimulus, right? And you have to understand. So, simultaneously, the other stimuluses that people get sports injuries, they use EM, the electromagnetic therapy as well,
mm,
and
mm,
so there's nothing that cannot happen. So, obviously, that by correct stimulus, whether through yogic therapy, through some of these machines that I spoke about, it can be done. And also is that about how to get you to know the power lies within yourself to heal yourself, right?
mm,
So the power doesn't lies outside of yourself. So to
mm,
know that there's nothing that you cannot do not to rehabilitate yourself. But I think is that in these lessons of life that we're learning now is that if you spend time in yourself and the correct diet and inputs in yourself, then you'll spend less at the chemist and the doctors afterwards. Right?
mm,
It's your investment in yourself now
mm,
than investment later on, additives later.
mm,
People often say that, I'm having this old topic about brain, and I'm having a lot of multivitamins and all this. But, and so I'm not sure whether the person that fills the multivitamin, whether it works or whether you got a problem, the absorption of this thing. But the body is like a periodic table. It's got all the
Mm.
elements that the body needs. But the deficiencies come from that when the lack of absorption, right? So
Okay.
iron deficiency, for example, right, when you have too much of tea, tannic acid, stimulants, coffees, that prevents the iron being absorbed,
Mm.
right? That also affects the brain function.
Okay. And I suppose the breathing exercises help with the absorption as well. Just thinking, blood is going to be flowing easily. Um, the breathing exercises will help with absorption, will it?
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely, and you find that it's a great simple tool that the breathing will help, because once the circulation is stimulated, right,
Yeah.
correctly in all the body system, and your arterial venous flow is in totally balanced, and you find your
Yeah.
absorption level definitely increases. It's all about your circulation. So your circulation must be optimal, you know.
Okay. We've got a few questions from a Facebook, Dr. Reddy. Lisa says that she has a deep mind, and is this a good thing? So I suppose she's a deep thinker. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, she's intense about what she does. She has a power of discrimination. She wants to interrogate stuff, which is great. I think
Mm,
that she's obviously stimulating herself in terms of a deep mind and look at things more in depth. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. I think it's
mm,
I think it's a great stimulus to understand that the deep mind is a look at things perhaps a little more aggressively in
mm,
discrimination, and I think it's fantastic, but provided that you don't get into your insular self and don't realize that sometimes that we look at things provided positively, right, in terms of
mm.
your deep mind, in terms of your analytics. I think your
Yeah.
analytics is critical in this whole process.
Mm, I agree there 100%, especially when it comes to overthinkers or people who tend to analyze every single situation from every single angle. I think it's a good thing, but sometimes it tends to like you said, it's your choice. It's whether you're going to stay in the negative parts of it or you stay in the positive parts of it. So you analyze everything, but make sure that at the end of the day we keep our glass half full and not half empty, if that makes sense. To look for the silver linings more than the problems, look for the solutions more than the problems, things like that.
Yes, yeah, yes. I think in the current climate of the world that we're going through, the world is almost at a crossroads throughout the whole world, and we're almost like right-sizing ourselves, and we are resetting our buttons. And I think that in
Mm,
this generation of people like from Facebook pose the question
yeah.
of having a deep mind, deep thinker. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that we
Yeah.
must make sure and be very vigilant that the deep mind gives a greater power of discrimination, but also the most important thing, to become more selfless, to become more harmonious, and to become more forgiving, forbearance. And I think all these are important qualities in this journey.
Yes, absolutely. Strong mind means you can
Yes.
manifest
Yeah.
manifest a lot more quicker. Um, there's another question, Dr. Reddy, from Carmen. She says, "Do you think that dementia or Alzheimer's can be reversed?"
Yes, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. No doubt, no doubt. Sometimes you need external help. I spoke about the beamer therapy and the electromagnetic therapies. It definitely can be done. You create the climate for the correct stimulus, right? For example, you take the people out of the scenario where they may feel depressed or feel unwell or whatever it is. You put them in a positive environment and put them in nature, expose them to music, get them to walk, get them to activities, group sessions. All
Mm,
these are important things that you do. Like whether it's playing, whether you're doing skipping, whether you're doing trampoline, you're playing a sport together. So try not to be too isolated, because I said earlier, we are social beings, right?
yes.
Right,
Yes.
and it's definitely you can get out of dementia, you can get Alzheimer's, and I think diet, less junk food, less processed foods. Alzheimer's is something that's been shown now. Foods, a lot of chemicals affect right brain left brain conduction and blocks the pathway. you know
Mm.
yeah, and we
Yeah,
shouldn't underestimate this.
yeah, true. I'm not too sure. Carmen, if I remember correctly, but I think Carmen works with old people. I think in either in an old age home or nursing home or something like that. So I think for her job, she does work with old people. I'm not too sure if that's correct, Carmen. Sorry if I'm wrong. But I think that's why, if it can be reversed and if she can be able to help the people that she's working with to reverse it. And I also think that it can be done, especially with Daddy as an example, who had a stroke, but you'd never say so. I think because the brain, uh, like I said, it's elastic and it retrained itself to speak and to walk. Daddy couldn't walk, he couldn't talk properly, he couldn't say words and things like that. Um, so I think that's important that the brain can be retrained. There's another question here, Dr. Reddy. Is soya not good? Well, that's a random question.
You know,
Good one.
I know lots of vegetarians eat soya, and myself personally, and I don't eat soya at home. Only if I have to go to some place, somebody offers me to be polite, I'll have soya. Anything that's processed and got chemicals in it, I think it's a problem. I
Mm,
think soya as emergency food, it's fine, but not as your dietary intake. I think we should eat more live foods. If you are vegetarian, I think all the live foods you should eat, and from terms of the vegetables, and you could sprout your foods, and you could do lots of things. And as chickpeas, the half a cup of chickpeas will give you all your nutrients you need. Definitely, soya
mm.
is not good because it's processed, right?
I see. Yeah, a comment, she looks after her aunt, and her aunt has Alzheimer's. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Uh, um, the lady who asked about if dementia and Alzheimer's can be reversed, she looks after her aunt, and the aunt is the one that has Alzheimer's.
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you have to follow my tips and advice that I gave this evening. And
Mm,
definitely, it can be. There's no end point. There's no things you cannot reverse, and everything is possible. Provided,
mm,
it's about effort pushed to the grace of God. The
yeah.
grace is always of the Lord of the universe. But just put the
Mm,
effort to make it happen. I think young people can play a big part with older parents, grandparents, by just conversing with them, visiting them, talking to them, uh, jogging their memories, playing some music, getting them walk, but group activities, even if they're older, it's fantastic. Play little things, board games, whatever it may be.
mm. Okay. Another question on TikTok. I have been asked many times if I'm either left brain or right brain. Is it incorrect to say both?
No, 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 definitely, definitely. And in fact, a well harnessed, exposed developmental perspective from childhood often has an integrated brain process, right and left brain. So it's not incorrect to say both, and definitely. And I give you an example. There's a science to show that if you play music at an early age and sing and do these things, you become profound mathematicians. And
Mm.
Professor Snedden at the University of KZN, right when she was alive and when she was a professor of music, she did a study on that to show music affects mathematicians positively. So
Wow.
so so music is the right brain and mathematics is the left brain. So definitely he can harmonize the both together.
Okay. Um, Carmen says the biggest issue she has with her aunt is getting her to drink water.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge amongst older people. It's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge, right? And I
Mm,
think that it's important to realize that your brain function is affected with lack of water. Dehydration
mm,
affects your brain, your stimulus, your clarity, your cell function, what they call the mitochondria, the circulation, and you need water.
yeah.
And this is the problem is that people who drink a lot of alcohol, they dehydrate themselves. They become fuzzy in the brain, and then they begin to unfortunately do things that they don't supposed to do because they're incoherent and all that.
Yeah. Yes, yes, absolutely. But I think it's also important to remember is um Oh, she says I'm winning the battle. I just keep pushing her. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all we can do. And to not take it to heart or take it personally. Because I know when it comes to old people, when I used to do exercises with old people, will sort of take it out on you and say you being mean to me or you being horrible to me. Just to remember that essentially what you're trying to do is to make the brain healthy, to stimulate it and to stimulate the functionality. And, if she doesn't want to, just keep pushing her, and eventually things will change. And if it doesn't, again, not to take it personally and to know that you're doing your best as well. And also not to neglect yourself. I think when people look after others, we tend to neglect ourselves. So, Carmen, I hope you also drinking water and stimulating your brain. There's also games on your phone that you can download. It's called Senior Games, and it has like where they show you different names of people, and then you got to remember the names, you got to remember the faces. Grocery lists, I think. There's also lots of games, as Dr. Reddy said. There's Sudoku, there's puzzles, Scrabble, that can help us exercise our brain and make sure that we using it at its optimal. Yeah, I find it very interesting that you said that's when you're 70, because I know a lot of people, I think it's a place in Japan called Okinawa, where there's people who are more than 100 years old that are living there, and they're the healthiest people. And I think they do Tai Chi. I'm not too sure. But it's one of those exercises that you can do when you're older that also stimulates the brain.
Yes, 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 yes. Tai Chi is a great discipline for that. A great discipline. You know what? It's a different kind of philosophy to yoga, but definitely it is that principle. I mean, definitely, and it stimulates the right brain, left brain, and whereby people prolong the life and among senior people, and and it's become part of the lifestyle.
Mm. There's another comment here. Dr. Reddy, would you recommend the practice I am principle from the New Earth to combat mental illness? Is that like affirmation vibes? Like I am healed, I am worthy, I am mentally stable. Is that the practice, Nugget and Knox? Is that what you're talking about? Are you familiar with it, Dr. Reddy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not very familiar with it, but I understand the affirmation principle. The I am principle, I think is a very important thing to realize that you are the one important person in life. You are the one. And so basically the I am principle is that it's almost a denominator to say that um, everything that's not you, right, you should shed it in life. There's nothing that's not you, shed it in life, right? But when you say that I am principle, basically you are one with the universe, right? And with the
Mm,
one of the universe to say that you're the most important entity. So the
mm,
I am principle, to realize that without the I am principle, I am the being, I'm being awareness bliss in the world, right?
mm,
So the being awareness bliss in the world creates the oneness with the universe,
mm,
right? And I think that it fits into the concept what you call constant integrated awareness. The I am principle, that be aware of yourself, be aware of your journey, be cognizant of your pathways, and you almost like the I am principle. You create the circle of light. Like Prenisha is a most important person, and you get the circle of light. I mean, and I think that's important to realize that it connects up with the source of being of existence,
mm.
and
Yeah.
to realize that to propel you on a higher plane. I said early on, 6,000 square miles of blood passes every second. The power lies
Mm.
within you.
Yes,
There's nothing that you cannot change in this world, nothing that you cannot heal. I said this in one of our other blogs, is that when you fracture your hand, you heal within yourself. The power is
yeah,
within yourself. So do
yeah.
not allow anybody to take the power out of you.
Mm,
Right? So the people who have dementia and Alzheimer's, unfortunately, circumstances have propelled in that situation. But from a selfless service aspect, we can, for example, like Carmen helping our aunt in this journey, which is
mm.
fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, right. It's amazing when you have the spirit of giving and sharing and loving and caring. You grow with the principle.
Mm.
right?
So true.
Right, and it broadens your horizon. It breaks down barriers within yourself, right?
Mm, mm,
And it often gives you a sense of well-being within yourself.
mm. And I think also when you connect to source power or your God or whoever it is, you feel that power. You feel it within yourself. And when you feel that, when you sense that, you sort of understand that there's so much more that's out there for you and there's so much more that you can achieve. And that's how it sort of breaks you out of mental illnesses or depression or thinking really heavy thoughts. And sometimes it requires us to actually feel that power, and to feel that energy. So I think exercising that and, sitting in meditation sometimes and connecting or going to, sometimes it happens, when you're listening to music or if you go to the church or temple or any place where the energies are, lifted or the vibration is higher, you feel it. And when we physically feel something, that's when we tend to believe, although that's not supposed to be how it is. We're supposed to, believe, just as, but, we're human and sometimes we need to feel that vibration and energy in order to get us back to believing in ourselves and understanding that we have creator power energy and source energy within us and we can achieve and do whatever it is that we want.
Yeah, and you see, Prinisha, the most important thing that in the conversation we're having now is to
Hmm.
circle yourself with all positive, good vibrations, with
Yeah.
people, with anything in life. Whether it's gemstones or whether it's from
Mm.
crystals and plants and you have everything of positive vibration to circle ourselves. So when you connect up to this positive energy and like-minded people, you feel good. In life, is that sometimes you have to shed friendships in life which brings you down. You only
Yeah.
associate with things that takes you into a higher plane of consciousness.
Hmm. Just a quick last question here from Carmen, Dr. Reddy. She's talking about, there's a lot of stress around, her aunt and even for Carmen herself, but they do walking. Should they walk barefoot, or is it okay to have shoes on? Barefoot is more grounding. We were talking about the pressure points. Is it better to walk barefoot?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in summertime and springtime, spring, you could do that. I mean, you get connected to the magnetic field of the earthly plane. And that's the
Mm.
reason why we say you be grounded. So you walk on the
Yes,
ground, you get grounded.
yes, yes. So better barefoot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But naturally, if you're doing longer walks on the road and pathways, obviously, I suggest that you wear good pairs of shoes.
Okay, okay. I hope that helps. Are there any more questions on Facebook and TikTok while we have Dr. Reddy here before he goes? Is there any more questions? Um, Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy. I think next week, if this is okay with you, I'd like to talk about more about nutrition. Because a lot of us don't know what's best for us. A lot of us don't know what's healthy and what's not. Can we talk about nutrition and
Yes, 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 yes. I think it's fantastic because, for example, that one of the people spoke about, Olive spoke about, is soy not good. So I think we need to say that what's alternatives. I think that let's talk
yeah.
why processed food are not good and what food you should concentrate on.
Yes, and also, we have lots of diabetics now. We have, like we said, more and more adults are being diagnosed with ADHD. A lot of processed foods, that's their, junk foods and things like that. But what's the alternatives we don't know. So we know what's not good for us. We know we're eating unhealthy, but we don't know what's the alternative to, a cheeseburger or ice cream, I think it'll be a good topic to talk about
Yeah, yeah,
if
no,
it's
no, that
like you
would be
said.
that'd be wonderful, and it'll be very contemporary, very useful for children, adults, families, and everybody. I think it fits into this topic tonight, where
Yeah.
the optimal brain function, you
Mhm.
need an optimal nutrition program.
Mm. I think Dr. Reddy, if you can, everybody, Dr. Reddy is on YouTube, okay, and he posts a lot of YouTube videos. I think we need to do a video of the actual super brain yoga where you do the, punishment vibes and all the other stretches and stuff and the alternate breathing, so at least people can see how to do it. And then we can post it. Are you open to that?
Yes, yeah, definitely, definitely we
Okay.
can do that.
Or
Definitely,
maybe
definitely
do
we'll do
like
that.
a Zoom, a live Zoom meeting where people then can see you doing the different exercises. Are you all open for that? Also, viewers, is that okay? Lots of good feedback. Is that okay with you, Dr. Reddy, to do
Yes,
a Zoom
definitely,
meeting?
definitely, definitely, definitely. I think that'll be great. We will definitely work on that, Prenisha, together.
Okay, okay. So I'll speak to Dr. Reddy. We'll come up with a date and time. Just follow me on Facebook and on TikTok. Make sure you follow Dr. Reddy as well. And then we'll post it when we'll do a Zoom meeting where we can actually see what to do, and maybe we can do some breathing exercises as well together, Dr. Reddy. I
Yes,
think that would be
definitely,
nice.
they definitely, and we show them how to get your posture right, how to get your perpendicular force of gravity. Simple things that are profound effects.
Okay, okay. So we'll come up with a date and a time, not too far from now, close. Hopefully next week or, in the next 2 weeks, and then we can actually see how to do these things. So please follow us. Dr. Reddy's on YouTube. If you go onto my posts on TikTok, you'll see his YouTube link is there. I'm on Facebook and here on TikTok. So just pay attention. I will put out a post when we'll be doing the live Zoom, okay? And then we'll do it together and we'll have a good time. So thank you, Dr. Reddy, for this. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking on our questions, and thank you for being put on the spot all the time. Thank you for asking our questions.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. But thank you, Prenisha, and thank all the participants. And it's been a fascinating evening. And
Yeah.
have a lovely week ahead.
You too. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody. And if you've missed a lot of what Dr. Reddy said, maybe you want to know about the medicines again, I will post the unedited, the full version of this on my Facebook page. Okay, so if you've missed anything, just go onto my Facebook. I will post the replay on there. So the information will always be out there. The medicines will be out there. You can contact me. You can contact Dr. Reddy if you need to know anything. And the space is open. We heal together, we share together, we grow together, and we love together. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you for the likes, thank you for the gifts, thank you for sharing the wonderful space, and we will see y'all soon. Just um keep an eye out for the posts. We'll let y'all know. Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy.
Take care. Bye for now, everybody.